everyone, welcome back to Acres of Clay. I'm Rhonda and today I'm going to be making fermented pickles. It's getting to be about fermenting season for me. The cabbage are making head and should be picked here shortly, and the carrots are about ready to be pulled. The pickles are in full production, so that means it's fermenting season for us. Plus, our house, we don't usually run the air conditioner just because it's always at a pretty comfortable temperature. It's right around 72, 75 in here during the day. So this is perfect temperature for fermenting vegetables. Today, I have a bunch of cucumbers that I just picked, and I'm going to show you how I do this. When fermenting, you want to use the freshest vegetables available. If you grow your own cucumbers, I would recommend picking them early morning and then fermenting them right away. But if you did not grow your own cucumbers, you can go to the farmer's market or wherever and purchase them and then put them in a bowl of really cold water, maybe add some ice cubes, let that set for a couple hours, and that will help crisp them back up. I just have extra in here. I picked these this morning, but I like to keep them in cold water or even in the refrigerator until I'm ready to use them. That way they don't start getting soft. So for the cucumbers, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut these ends off. I've washed everything up. I'm going to cut the ends off and I'm going to quarter these. And I'm just going to quarter these like this and make spears out of them. You can leave them whole, especially if you're using cucumbers that are smaller, which is kind of ideal. These are getting a little bit big, but it's ideal to use small to medium cucumbers. Now the recipe that I have, or that I kind of follow with the brine, it doesn't add onion or anything else. It does have garlic in it, but I am omitting the garlic and I'm replacing that with onion. So I have an onion cut up, and I also may throw in some bell peppers. Now when you're working with fermentation, you have to make sure everything is very clean. The cucumbers everything here has been washed. All the vegetables are washed very thoroughly. The jars that I use are washed, and then I rinse them with vinegar. And vinegar is a very good cleanser, so there's no unwanted bacteria in my jars. There are a few different ways that you can ferment. So you can take your jar and add just a lid and a ring, and you can ferment like that. I did that in the beginning when I first started fermenting, and then later I bought these fermenting lids. I'm not sure if you can see this. It's a fermenting lid with a Tatler lid. It's a fermenting top with a Tatler lid, and it just sits in this hole. You fill this up with water, and then the air bubbles from the jar will escape out the top. I also more recently purchased these airlock lids, and this is what I'm going to be using today. These just get placed on top of your wide mouth jar, put a ring around it, and it has a little air hole vent right here, so you don't have to burp this or anything. Alright, let's start making these. Before I start with these, I don't want to cut anything up just yet. I want to start with filling the jars with the spices. So in here, in my colander, I have grape leaves and I have fresh dill. Grape leaves are what's going to keep its crispness. Now if you don't have wild grape leaves, these are not wild. These are what are grown in my backyard, and but wild is best. I can just leave this stem on, just fold it under. This, I'm actually making 2 quarts, So I just have a 2-quart jar. You can put this in 2 1-quart jars also. You're gonna want about 6, 8 grape leaves, maybe 10, depends on how big they are. So I'm just gonna put these at the bottom. I didn't count how many I had. That should be good. Just a small handful, I guess. And then I'm gonna add the dill. The fresh dill I've washed also, because you never know what is lurking on your dill. Now if you don't have fresh dill, I'm going to put about 2 heads of the flowering dill in it. But if you don't have fresh dill, you can add like 2 to 4 tablespoons of the dry dill leaves or the dry dill seed, it doesn't matter. Now I'm going to add some black peppercorns. You don't have to have these, but this is just for flavor, and I'm just doing a couple pinches for the 2 quart. Now we're going to make the brine, set this aside. Okay, for the brine, you are going to need 4 cups of dechlorinated water. So if you do only have chlorinated water in your home, be sure to buy some filtered water. I have just well water and it works perfectly fine. To this, we're going to add 3 tablespoons of salt. So the recommended is sea salt. I'm using pink Himalayan salt. You don't want to use iodized salt, but you can use kosher salt. I think would be fine in here. Three tablespoons for 2 quarts. So I'm just dissolving this. There may be some minerals and stuff that doesn't get dissolved, which is perfectly fine. Okay, this is just like room temperature water also. You don't want to use cold water, but you don't want to use hot water either. Now I'm going to prepare the vegetables, and I'm going to place them right in the jar. Alright, here we are. Have them all packed up in there. And we are just going to, and you want to be careful not to bruise your cucumbers. That may make them mushy and not as crisp. So, alright, so the only thing to do next is add the brine. You want to make sure that you leave about an inch headspace, so right about there. And you want to make sure all of your vegetables are covered with the brine. That's very important. When I purchased these airlock lids for fermenting, they also came with these glass weights. So they fit perfectly in your large mouth jars. So that holds the vegetables underneath the brine. Then you put your lid on, and I've washed both of these. First I washed them with vinegar, and then I rinsed them off. And then you just screw your ring right out on top. And there you have it. Now with these lids, the air, any bubbles that start forming, the air will be released through this lid, which is perfect. But if you're using a regular canning lid, you're going to want to make sure you burp that, turn it, let some air loose, and you may not want to fill it very full. You may only want to fill it this full. Now when I was using these Tatler lid ones, I used, for a weight, I would use a rock. You can sterilize a rock and set it right on top. That will keep your vegetables under the brine. You put the lid on, and air will come out of this also. So there's many different ways of doing it, but you just want to make sure that the air is released once you start seeing bubbles building. Okay, here we go. So this is what it all looks like when it's all said and done. All the leaves are at the bottom, the dill, and the peppercorns will probably rise to the top. This is going to turn, over time, this is going to turn to be a nice dark green to more of a pale looking green, olive green maybe. And so I'm just going to leave this on the kitchen counter. Today it's about 75 degrees in here, so it's a little bit warmer on the warm side. It may ferment a little bit faster. The warmer your home is, the faster it ferments. You may want to check this in 2 days. Usually on an ideal temperature, 70, 72, 3 to 5 days would be perfect to leave it on the counter. After about 24 hours, you're going to start seeing bubbles bubbling in here, and that you know is working. It's starting to ferment, and just leave it be. Just let it sit on the counter. You don't have to do anything with it. You don't have to shake it or anything. It will do its thing. Then you may want to taste test it every day or so until it reaches the likeness of your taste. After it has fermented and you're happy with the flavor of them, I would take this lid off of it and put a regular canning lid on and stick this in the refrigerator. Now after you put it in the refrigerator, you may want to let it set for another week. That way it will continue to deepen its flavor, and it will be really, really healthy for you. It'll be filled with probiotics that will help your gut if you're having any gut issues. And so anyways, yeah, you can store them in the refrigerator. These will last for quite a while in the refrigerator if they actually last that long. I've had sauerkraut and dilly carrots fermented in the refrigerator for well over 6 months, I think, and it was just fine. It tasted just like you made it. So it does fermented, as long as it stays in the refrigerator and stays cold, it does last quite a while. Now you want to make sure that it doesn't start growing any like weird colors. Sometimes it will form a little scum on the top, which is perfectly fine. You just skim that off. But if it's getting furry or fuzzy, then you may not want to eat these. Something may have, a bad bacteria may have gotten into your jar, and you don't want to risk it. And I hope you guys give these a try. They are super healthy for your gut health, and anything fermented is. Thank you all for joining me and watching. I really appreciate it. I hope you're having a very blessed day. Take care, everyone.